Hello again everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Down to Earth with Jim, where we're going to be planting our main crop potatoes. We've got a load of potato buckets here, 30 litre buckets from Oakland Gardens, which we're going to be planting our main crop potatoes in. We've got about 30 something, I've lost count of them to be honest, with that many of them. We've got a few really nice varieties that we're going to be growing this year. Two of which we grew last year, our Sarpameras and our Setantas, two really nice red-skinned potatoes that are quite blight resistant. I'm only really growing blight resistant varieties this year because we do have quite a big problem with blight on our site, so we've got to try and work our way around that. So Setanta, Sarpamera and a new variety which I've never grown before, King Edward. So we'll see how they are. And we've got quite a lot of these leftover potatoes from last year. Potatoes, they were a little bit small. We like to peel our potatoes, and they were just left and they just started sprouting. And these I'm going to be planting as well. Some of them have gotten very, very long, but we're going to throw them in, see how they do anyway. You know, what we've got to lose. So we've got a few of those. So yeah, now a lot of people have been talking about a possible shortage of potatoes in the UK this year, and that's all down to the war in Ukraine. Now obviously that's affected supply of wheat. We're not being able to get wheat from them like we used to. So a lot of farmers in the UK that would have otherwise been growing potatoes are now looking at alternative options that are going to be more profitable for them, which makes sense, to be honest, because they are running a business at the end of the day. So they're now thinking of growing wheat instead of potatoes. Now potatoes are cheap as chips, literally, so I can see why they're going to be doing this. So I think it is possible that the price of potatoes will be going up, and there probably will be a shortage on the shop shelves. I will not be surprised if we start seeing that in the summer months. So I think it's well worth growing your potatoes anyway, but I think more so this year, really. Now there's not only the fact that potatoes that you grow yourself are much better quality anyway, I've found. Well, unless you have a problem with the wireworm like I did last year, that's why I'm growing them in buckets. But I've found that the quality is much better. All these potatoes that you get in the supermarket that have been stored in a warehouse for months on end, I quite often find a lot of rotten black bits inside the potato, and it's not really good quality. So there's that benefit of growing your own potatoes. And to be honest, I find it incredibly satisfying to grow my own potatoes anyway. Cost doesn't even come into it, to be honest. No matter how cheap potatoes are, I will still always grow my own potatoes. So as I said, I've got 30 odd buckets of potatoes here, buckets full of potatoes, and I'm going to be doing them in the polytunnel to start off with, and that is because, well, for two reasons. It's throwing it down like it has been most days. We're having a lot of wet weather at the moment, so I want to be doing it undercover. And it is only the beginning of April, so I want to get them off to a little bit of a head start, and I'll probably keep them under this cover for 3 or 4 weeks just to get them off to a start. Now potatoes will grow in temperatures as low as around 7 degrees, so they don't require that much warmth to grow, but that little bit of warmth that this polytunnel provides will give us a little bit of a head start, and it will benefit us. So, you know, end of April, early May, I will take these potatoes outside, and they're sat on the raised beds at the moment, but they will be moved outside, and then our 1,000 tomato plants will then be planted in these beds after these have been migrated outside. So now I am using a lot of old compost from last year to cut down on the cost of the cost really, because if I were to buy bags and bags of compost to fill these 30 odd buckets, well, if you do some simple maths, you can work out just how many litres of fresh compost we're going to need, and it's going to work out as a hell of a lot of money. So we're using old compost. We've put some well rotted horse manure in these buckets last autumn, and the compost, the horse manure is not as fresh anymore, so that's going to be adding nutrients to these buckets. And we're also going to be amending the soil with bloodfish and bone, and we're going to be putting a bit of fresh compost in there as well, a good couple of inches, just to add a little bit more nutrients in there. And I've got a little bit of grow more left, which I'm going to use as well. I'm probably not going to be using it again. I'm just going to use it, the rest of it, while I've got it, and then I'm going to go to all organic options. So potatoes are quite heavy feeders, so I am going to make sure that I'm giving them the nutrients that they need. Now, with these being main crop potatoes, I am going to be doing them a little bit differently from the kestrel, which I did a few weeks ago. If you've watched that video, you'll know. Now, in these buckets, I'm going to be doing 2 potatoes rather than 4 potatoes, which I did with the secondaries. And that's because, well, they take up much more space. They're much more vigorous. They're going to be in these buckets for much longer. And yeah, there's going to be more potatoes, and there's going to be bigger potatoes that we're getting from these buckets. Not only am I going to be planting 2 per bucket, I'm also going to be taking some of the chits off these potatoes as well. I'm going to be removing some of these chits. Okay, so we have our seed potato here, which has been left a chit now for the last couple of months. And there's some, reasonable sized chits on there. So these are now ready to go. And to be honest, there's only 1 chit on this potato. So well, there is a couple there actually. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure there's only 2 chits on each potato, and I'm going to be removing them with this 20p. I'm just going to be gouging them out, these chits. Now, what that's going to do, by limiting our potatoes to just 2 chits or 2 sprouts, that's going to give us fewer potatoes, but these potatoes that we do get are going to be bigger. So the plant is going to be able to put more energy into producing larger tubers rather than more tubers. So we like to have bigger potatoes because, like I said, we like to peel our potatoes, and yeah, we don't really like eating them with the skin on. So with us having bigger potatoes, that makes peeling much easier for us. So I'm going to get on with removing all the excess chits from these potatoes now. I'll just show you what I'm doing here. So I've got my potato here, and there's two chits at the top of that one. I'm just going to remove any extra ones that I see. I'm just going to scrape them off. Yeah. So I'm just going to show you how I'm planting these potatoes in one of these buckets now. And like I said, I am doing them differently from the early potatoes, the kestrel potatoes. Now with the kestrels, I did 4 potatoes per bucket because, well, they're faster growing, they're not going to take as long, they don't take as much root space, you get less potatoes and smaller potatoes. And they're going to take less nutrients as well. So rather than wasting a bucket full of compost and nutrients with 2 potatoes, we've planted 4 potatoes on 2 levels, because these second early potatoes grow on a single level, and if I were to just put 2 in there on one level, all that compost on the other level would just be wasted. They wouldn't use it. So whereas with the main crop potatoes, they grow and they fill out the entire container. So they'll take all the nutrients out of this full container. So that is one thing that's going to be different there. And I am applying a little bit more nutrients than with the kestrels. Now, with the kestrels, I had the horse manure in there. I put a little bit of compost in there as well, and a little bit of grow more as well. But I didn't put any bloodfish and bone in there, and I'm putting bloodfish and bone in here because I want to add more nutrients into it. So let's just begin with our, I'm going to put sarpomeras in first. Now I'm just going to put a little handful of grow more. I'm going to mix that in nicely. So I've got horse manure at the bottom there. It's fine if some of that gets mixed in. I've got plenty of bloodfish and bone to use here. A good all-purpose fertiliser. Just like that. And that's going to help replenish. So the bloodfish and bone, the grow more, and the horse manure is now replenished that soil there, really. So we've got that. We're going to take our two Sarpamera potatoes, and I'm going to place them with the chits up, facing upwards if I can as well. Or to place them on the underside of the potato. They're going to have to work to go all the way around the potato and back up again. So yeah, make it easier for them. And depth wise, I'm probably planting them around about six inches deep. So we've got them in there like so. And we're going to take a little bit more old compost. We're not going to put any new stuff on just yet. Putting some fresh compost on top of that to fill up the rest of the container. And it is as simple as that. There is nothing really complicated, and that is pretty much it. But I am going to, like I did with the second earlies, I'm going to apply a mulch of straw on the top. And this is why you usually hill up potatoes, and that is to stop the sunlight from getting to the tubers, because when tubers are exposed to light, they turn green due to a chemical called solanine, and that solanine is toxic. You don't want to be eating potatoes that are green. So to prevent that, you would usually mound them up, but I'm going to be applying a straw mulch on top, and that's going to stop the sunlight from hitting them tubers. So, but the other thing that this is going to do, it's going to help with watering as well, because they're grown in containers. Applying a mulch on top is really going to help conserve that moisture, hold that moisture in the bucket, reduce loss through evaporation. We don't want our potato buckets to be drying out. We want to be watering we want to make watering as easy as we possibly can, really, because if we let these buckets dry out during the growing season, it's going to negatively affect our yields. So yeah, we're going to be applying straw, and luckily for us, there is plenty of it. There's massive piles of horse manure and straw bedding that was used for them horses, so we've got no shortage of straw. So yeah, I'm going to be filling up the rest of the 30 or so buckets right now. Okay, so that is all 33 buckets of potatoes filled with Maincrop, Satanta, Sarpamera and King Edward, and they've all now been mulched to help with watering, to help stop them potatoes from being exposed to the sunlight, and also to help with weed suppression as well. They'll also suppress the weeds. So I've mostly used old compost from last year's potatoes, but I've topped them up with a little bit of fresh compost as well. I've only used about 4 bags of compost, which is much better than the 20 or so bags I could have otherwise been using if I hadn't have used last year's compost. I've also added a bit of bloodfish and bone and a little bit of horse manure, well rotted horse manure, and I've used up a little bit of grow more I had left as well. So there's also these 6 buckets of castrol. So all in all, we have 39 buckets full of potatoes in the polytunnel here. That concludes my main crop potato planting video. I do have a few more left over which I'm going to throw in the ground somewhere whenever I find space. We've not got that much space left now. I've filled it up with pretty much everything. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something from the video. And remember, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, and remember to hit that like button as well. It helps a lot. So yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one. I hope you all stay safe and happy gardening.